Welcome to the Unlocking Wealth podcast. Thanks for joining us. We will motivate and inspire you as we share strategies from successful and wealthy individuals. Here is your host, David Ordonez, an entrepreneur and real estate investor.
Welcome to the Unlocking Wealth podcast. Thank you for joining us. I'm very excited today. I have my good friend Jonathan Jossel. He's the CEO of the Plaza Hotel and Casino. I'm very excited to have you here today. Actually, you're having me.
That's right.
In the casino. So, we're at Oscars. So I'm very excited to have you, man.
Thank you. And great to see you. Thank you for coming down here. This is where we actually do our podcast. So this is where I like to be, very comfortable in here. Hopefully it's good for the lighting. You have a more professional setup. But great to see you again. You did forget an important part of the introduction. The best soccer player you ever played with back in the day.
Correct.
That was our...
We won every championship we could have ever won.
Absolutely, in like the 45-year-old plus men's league, but yes.
Yes, that's right. Actually, that's how I met John. We played soccer back in 2008, 2009, and that's how we became friends. So
Listen, playing sport is where the best relationships are formed.
I agree.
It's when you get to know people, you see their more relaxed side, their competitive side.
Yes.
You see how they react under different pressures. And
I agree.
There's nothing better than knowing people through sport. That's how I like to spend my time, getting to know people as friends or even in business, just whether it's golf, tennis, in the old days before I got old and overweight, soccer.
No, I agree. I completely agree with you. We built great relationships through sports and activities like that. Just a little bit about Jonathan. He's originally from South Africa.
Yep.
You grew up, were raised in London.
Correct.
So tell us a little bit about your life, how you ended up being the CEO of the Plaza, after you came to the US.
So you're correct. I was born in Johannesburg, in South Africa. I lived there for a few years. And then my parents left during what was a turbulent time in South Africa in the late 80s, early 90s. So we moved with them to London. And when you move to a new country, never mind a new city, a new country with very different cultures, it can be difficult. It was definitely a challenge. We were young though, so we were still adaptable. But we moved to London when I was 6 years old.
Oh, okay, you were young.
And basically you're starting all over again. You're making new friends. You're learning a different way of doing things, different climates. And we grew up in London, my father did some, it's not easy to move and to find new businesses, but he did some good business deals, which allowed us to have a good quality of life in London, which is not easy. And then as I went through school there, I found myself, it's a crazy story, but I found myself drawn to sports betting. I was into gambling, I was into horses. Back then it was greyhounds, the little dogs that run around, not so little, but the dogs. And I was very much into that. And England has a huge culture of sports betting, horse betting, and greyhounds. And it was through that I took an interest in the casino business. And
was your family involved somewhat with the casino?
Not at all.
Different type of business.
Different businesses, totally zero experience in that. And I was so interested in it and the business behind it that when I finally went to college or university, as we call it in England, I did my thesis on the gambling industry in the UK. And what that meant was in 2000, late 90s, early 2000, there was a lot of talk about Las Vegas style casinos moving to England.
Okay.
And there was an area where they were talking about doing it, a few different areas, there wasn't just one. And I was doing a thesis on the social impact of gaming in new markets and what would happen, positive, negative. And that's what my thesis was around, a new casino. So in that process, a family friend by the name of Poyu Zabladovic, who I knew through my family, told me one day at lunch that he had just invested in 6 casinos in downtown Las Vegas. This was in about 2004. And I said, wow, it's not every day you meet somebody like that. I was like, that's pretty cool. So I ended up asking him for work experience. And in 2005, I got on a plane. I wasn't yet 20. I wasn't yet 20, and I moved out here for a few months, and I lived in the Plaza. Now, for anyone that doesn't know, when did you move to Vegas?
07, same like you.
Same like me.
Yep.
So in 05, if you came to downtown Las Vegas, it was not good.
Different.
I mean, the hotels were all run down. The clientele was very different. And the crazy thing was there wasn't another area. Like today, when you come downtown, you say, oh, I'm going to go to East Fremont. I'm going to go to the Arts District. I'm going to go to Symphony Park. Even the Huntridge is starting to get gentrified.
Yep.
There was nothing. There was just the Fremont Street experience. If you walked to 6th Street over,
Yep.
all bets were off.
Yep.
Anything could happen.
Yep.
So I was living here in the plaza. It was not nice. And I said to this guy, you bought 6 casinos down here, all this land. Like, what are you thinking? And he had told me an interesting story. He had bought a building in Times Square in New York in 1990-ish, give or take. And he had a great vision of an area in 1990, you couldn't get out of your car in Times Square, you'd get robbed. But he bought into the idea that the mayor was going to clean it up, there'd be investment, and he was proven right. He bought a building there, and today, Times Square is the center of America, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's huge
So
tourism.
he usually comes to the US, invests in buildings,
Yeah.
and adds value to that particular real estate, and obviously builds a business around it.
Or takes a long-term view that
Okay.
the area is going to change. You see, you can say, I'm going to invest in something and change it and then sell it. Or you can take a view of, I'm going to let everything around it continue to develop and change and clean up.
So it also helps the community around it,
course.
and obviously it has a social effect
Right.
too. Which is great.
However, so he did very well in Times Square. The difference is a hotel casino is very different to an office building. So he had 6 casinos and it was with a management company, and you've got unions, you've got lots of employees, you've got 24/7 business, you've got people in the casino doing strange things, you've got a lot of cash. There's a lot more variables that go into running a hotel and casino than to running an office building.
Yep.
And it didn't work out so well for them. But I was working for them now, fast forward a couple of years. I left Vegas after 2005. 2004, I didn't really like my time here. But I liked the people I worked with, and they offered me a job to work for the company between New York and London.
Okay.
And I worked there for 2 years, and they said to me, hey, we need someone on the ground in Vegas. Things are changing. I said, what do you mean things are changing? I was just there 2 years ago. Nothing was changing. He said, no, there's young people getting involved, and you should go out there and check it out. So that was 2007. And I came here, and I landed. I went to this bar called the Downtown Cocktail Room, and there was like 3 young guys. I was like, well, who are you 3? One of them owned the bar. One of them was building high-rise downtown, and the other one was looking at doing other bars downtown. I said, okay, it's changing. There's young people starting to take an interest down here. And that's really how it began. And I started to see
the vision.
I started to see a vision, but more than a vision, I saw an opportunity. You see, the problem in London or in these developed cities is you're just a small fish in a huge pond, a small fish in an ocean.
Yeah.
You come to downtown Las Vegas, or even Las Vegas
In general.
15, 20 years ago,
lot
it's
of
a small community. There's a lot of opportunity, and it's still developing so much that there's just a great chance to do things, which you just can't do in established cities. It just doesn't happen. So I saw that, and then, I didn't yet have a visa. I couldn't stay for long periods. So I was back and forth and still working for the UK company. But that's how I ended up here and believing in what took place. Now, the second step of becoming a CEO, that's a whole different story.
Now, remember you were involved in the renovation of the plaza,
Yes.
right? That was back in 2012?
2010, we
All right.
closed down the plaza. We had a great opportunity. Again, everything in life is timing. So we were looking to remodel the plaza. Well, let me say this. I landed in 2007, and there was the recession and the financial crisis.
Correct.
And there's a great lesson in that being able to learn a business during a crisis, assuming you can survive it, and thankfully with our chairman and the group in London, we were able to survive it. But assuming you can survive it, it's a great time to learn a business is during a downturn, because it makes things much easier in the upside, and you learn how to be more careful, and you learn how to be much more cost conscious, and not take things for granted because you lived through that difficult time.
Yeah.
So there was the recession, and then fast forward to 2010, we thought, well, we should do a remodel of the plaza. It was really not in a good shape. And the Fontainebleau went bankrupt the first time around in 2007 or 8. And a designer called me and said, they're selling all the furniture. The new owner just bought it. They're selling everything for like 12 cents on the dollar. And we went in there. We saw all this stuff. We said, we'll buy it. This tile right here is from there. A lot of what you still see today is still from that 2010 purchase.
Renovation.
We shut down the whole plaza. We did a remodel. But you're correct. I was just here on the real estate side. I wasn't doing operations. I wasn't in the casino business. I was learning it, and I was taking a keen eye and under certain people that were here, but I wasn't yet doing any of that. I was just here on the real estate side.
Okay. When is the moment that you got involved in more in the operations part? And
So we did the remodel in 2011, and I watched after we reopened. The place was packed. It was unbelievable. I said, my God, we did it. I called the guy in England. I said, you're not going to believe it. The place is packed. And this was in August, and we just reopened. And in September it was packed. And then in October was a little less people. It gradually less and less people. And suddenly by December, it was like we'd never done a remodel. It was empty. I said, what the hell happened here? And the next 2 years were really difficult because I was unsure. We just spent all this money. We were not doing any better. And it really dawned on me that it wasn't necessarily just the building, it was the management, and things hadn't been done right necessarily.
So at this moment, you're not involved yet.
No. I'm here and I'm seeing it, but I'm not in any official capacity.
Okay.
So I called the owner up in England, and I think I was 28. And I said to him, listen, I've been here now 6 years. I've learned the business. I've seen what's happened. It's not going well. Let me become the licensee and the CEO. And he said, you're nuts. You're just a young guy. What are you talking about? I said, well, that's true, but look what's happening. It's not going well. And I think there's reasons that we can do things better. Let me get that. And I don't know what his thought process was. You'd have to interview him. But for whatever reason, he said, yeah, he backed me. He let me go through the gaming process. I had to start by going into becoming a key employee and then going through different processes to get the gaming license. But I did eventually, about 18 months, get licensed. I was 29.
That's great.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. Amazing opportunity, amazing experience. And that's when I got into the business. So that was in like 2000, and I think it was the end of 2015.
Okay.
When I really set about now turning my focus to the operation and the gaming business.
And now you're involved 100%. You oversee all the operations and the real estate too.
Correct. Well, yeah, so the real estate, we did sell a lot of the real estate over the years. We sold a lot of it to Downtown Project when Tony Hsieh was still alive. Yep. We sold what was the Las Vegas club across the street that today is Circa.
Okay.
We sold that to them. So we sold a lot of the real estate we had, and so which made it more streamlined and focused on what we wanted to do, which was the plaza. We still have a lot of other land. We have some stuff in East Fremont, the Arts District, but the plaza is the focus, and that's really what I'm 100%. We do 100% everything. So we don't sub out. Some places, for example, there's a licensee for the casino, but someone different runs the hotel side of it. Everything for us, food and beverage, hotel, casino,
is under the same
is
roof.
all under the same company.
Perfect.
Which makes a lot more sense in my opinion.
Yeah, oh, that's great. Now you've been involved a lot also on the downtown efforts to recover downtown, to make it a more a nicer downtown, nicer restaurants. And
right.
You've been involved a lot in that, right? Tell me a little bit more about
those
plans.
What I was saying in the beginning about believing in the area is just as important as believing in the business. When you enter a new business, you either have to believe that you can do something dramatic in the business capacity to make it different, or believe that something around you is going to change.
Correct.
Whether it's your industry or your playing field. Well, our playing field is downtown. I always knew that going into it, that in order for us to be successful, downtown had to be successful. Maybe you could argue the Golden Nugget was an outlier and they were able to be successful even when downtown wasn't, but they're dramatically more successful now that downtown is more successful.
Correct.
So for all of us, there's been a unified approach of, instead of saying what's good for me, it's what's going to be good for downtown as a whole. And that's when I think there was a lot more community feeling down here as opposed to on some of the other regional casinos and strip casinos where there's a bit more competition. There's certainly competition down here, but if someone across the street's busy or there's a new casino across the street, it only helps us. When the bus station that left the plaza was here for 50 years and it goes, that only helps us. When you see 800 new apartments to the west, it only helps us. So it's understanding that, and in order for all those things to happen, it took grassroots initiatives. Now, Downtown Project was one giant initiative, but before them, there was a couple of bars, and that's what got people coming down here originally. It was the Beauty Bar, Downtown Cocktail Room, then came the Griffin, then you had La Thai. You had these little organic steps, and if those guys didn't do that, you would never have gotten Downtown Project. You maybe would never have gotten some of the other big casino operators that came and saw those places. Yeah. So we felt like by bringing in the Beauty Bar down here, by bringing in La Thai down here, and then some of the other bars that came 2-3 years later, but were still early, Commonwealth, La Comida.
Yeah.
By those guys coming down here, it paved the way for people to say,
changes, right?
let's do Life is Beautiful.
Yeah.
It paved the way for people to say, Let's reinvest down further on East Fremont. Let's go to the arts district. All of that was an organic process. And I think that wasn't one person. That was the community buying into making this area better. And who knows how far this can go. I mean, I hear every day now.
And there's a lot of new projects that have come to downtown, bigger projects, new money coming to the downtown. And I think that's just going to help downtown become, what we hope it will. It's a great downtown. I think there's a lot of opportunities.
There's a lot more coming. And I hear every day from people that never used to come down here. Now they come down here because, they came here in the old days. I was talking to a customer this morning. She said that she always stayed on the Strip, but she would come down here to gamble because she wanted to see the old lights and the neon and some of the machines she liked more downtown. But then she realized that there's really good restaurants downtown, which they never used to be. There's nice hotel rooms that they never used to be. There's swimming pools that they never used to be. All of these things a decade ago weren't here. So now you start to say, well, now there's the history, the old machine, the good machines, the better pay tables, the better gambling experience, and you mix that with great entertainment, great shows, great food, great rooms, great pools, and it's a good combination.
And that is great that you've been part of it because you came to downtown when it was what it was, and now you've seen the changes. So that's great. So tell me a little more about you. Great story of how you came from London to the US, got involved in the business. Now tell me about your mindset, about what are the things that have helped you to be successful on your career, on what you're doing, on your personal life.
So it's interesting, when I moved here, I didn't know anyone. And I think that was a good thing in a way because it forced me to do two things. One, to go out and meet people and understand what made this community work. People thought, you're just partying, you're going to clubs, you're going to the Strip, to the other places. But that's critical to understanding how this city works. And when I came here in 2007, 8, 9, 10, those years were very formative in understanding, learning about the business, learning about the people that made the business work, understanding how the valets, by meeting those people and understanding how they all worked and what happened in their positions, whether it was a valet attendant, cocktail worker. It was really important to me to do that. The second part of it, by not knowing people, it didn't force me. It made
Pushed you.
It made me more comfortable to spend endless hours in this building.
Okay.
And people would say, you're crazy, what are you doing? But one, I didn't have much else to do because I didn't know many people besides playing soccer with you. But I would come down here many nights and just go down Fremont Street and see what everyone was doing. I'd come to the plaza at 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m. In the early days, I would stand by the entrance and see what were people, when they walked in the door, what was the first thing they were experiencing? Where were the lights? Where was the signage? Where were the walkway carpets? By dedicating those hours, it formed my opinion and my insight into what made people either come here or when they got here, what were they experiencing? And I think that's really important to learning a business.
You spend a lot of time observing the business and the community around.
And also because there wasn't much business, it was the recession, I would take time just to be here and talk to the employees. So I would talk to a bartender who was here back in the 70s or 80s and ask him, why did people used to love the plaza? Or why do people still come to the plaza? I would talk to the slot attendants because they weren't doing anything because there was no one in the building. So by me being here those hours and then by getting to know the team, it gave me a little bit more credibility with them when it came time for me to actually become the licensee. They were like, oh, they knew me more personally because I would spend time here. But I think that's really what shaped me because I had that opportunity. I think a lot of people came down here and they would become the CEO and maybe been in the building 10 times. Yeah. And that still happens.
Now, what gave you that vision of it? I mean, what opened your eyes that was something that you had to do in order to get involved in the community, in the plaza community, and eventually, obviously, observe, learn, and become what you became? What came to your mind?
Nobody told me to do that. The answer to that question, it's maybe a little cliche. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed being down here at 11 o'clock at night, 12 o'clock, and seeing what was happening. I enjoyed the people. I enjoyed the energy. I enjoyed the casino business was always something I enjoyed.
That you enjoyed.
So I wanted to be here. And I had nothing else to do. I wasn't just going to go home. Now, I will tell you, secret in life, when you have some kids, that all changes. And you suddenly have to wake up earlier and you have different obligations. my life has dramatically changed in the last 5 years. But nothing can take away those formative times that you spent and the hours you put into the business to really understand it. Keep in mind, a lot of people come to work in our business. It's different in every industry, but you come to the work Monday to Friday from, let's say, 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. And I say to them, what are you doing? Are you crazy? When do we make money? We make money from, most of the money, I should say, 7 p.m. to midnight and like 4 p.m. till 2 a.m. on the weekends. The exact opposite of the hours you're here. How do you know what's going on? How do you see it? So you gotta think like that.
Yeah.
You gotta adjust your schedule. This is a different business to
It's a
many other
different
businesses.
industry, yeah,
You know what I mean? Well, and a lot of hospitality is that way, whether it's restaurants or bars. It's the same concepts. But you know, you just learn that by doing. And I had the opportunity to learn that because I was here in a sort of unofficial capacity, but I was here
Observing and
observing
learning.
and learning, and that's what formed a lot of what I then did when I became the CEO.
Any mentor? Anybody that helped you out? Anybody that gave you good insight, advice?
Yeah, there was a few. There was the guy that was here prior. He had a lot of gaming experience, but more than anything, just learning about how, you know, he taught me how to not to treat people, but how to relate to the team members around you. You got to remember, we have 700 employees here for us. Every casino's got less, more, whatever, but 700 is a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
And learning how to relate to them, getting to know them. He really gave me insight into being a good leader in terms of never showing them if you're concerned about something, that they should still feel comfortable when they come to work, that they're going to be okay. This was during the recession. I mean, you know, if they heard me screaming on the phone about finances, you could really freak somebody out about coming to work. So keeping an upbeat mentality, and then learning, identifying sort of what makes them work. This is something that I've learned over the years. When somebody says to you, what's your management style? It's sort of a ridiculous question, because your management style is going to depend on who you're dealing with. You know, you might have somebody who responds really well to an aggressive, pumped up talk, and you might have somebody else who's terrified and freaked out by that same mentality. And with them, you have to be much more compassionate.
And it depends on the industry, obviously.
Right.
I mean,
But and not just the industry, the individual. Everybody responds differently to different types of management.
yeah.
Even if you talk to the best sports coaches in the world, they'll tell you that getting to know the people and what motivates that each person is different. It's not one size fits all.
yeah. Oh, no,
It shouldn't be.
It's hard to be a leader,
Yeah.
right? It's hard. What's the biggest challenge for you to be a leader of the Plaza and 700 employees? What's the biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge for me is just convincing people that because we're just a single property, that there's potential to grow. You know, people always want to evolve, as they should. If they don't want to grow and they don't want to evolve, then they shouldn't be in your team. But convincing them that there's a growth plan, because you know, if you're at a Boyd or MGM, you can grow into a bigger property. You can grow into a multiple levels of structure in terms of corporate. We just don't have that. We don't have those same opportunities, which is a good thing and a bad thing, because for many people, they love that. That's why they come here in the first place, because they don't want all those layers. They love that they get to meet with the general manager, the CFO, with me on a regular basis. But then when they want to grow, if you don't have that next step for them, building that loyalty is difficult.
That's a challenge. What's the next big step for the Plaza and for Jonathan?
Well, we had a really good year in 2021.
Great.
As did most of the industry, if not all of the industry. And it was a difficult 2020 with the pandemic. So I think we got to get out of this sort of situation that we all find ourselves in, which is, it's very hard to project. It's very hard to plan. You know, we've just seen now the challenges with staffing, the challenges with Omicron.
Yes.
So the challenges with canceled flights, which is still going on. So we got to get out of this cycle
Supply
of just
chain
sort of
issues.
Supply chain issues. I mean, so we got to get out of that. But for the Plaza, we've come to. We know that Main Street, where we are, and the neighborhood is the most important thing to our business. And so now, with everything that's happening around us, we're building a bridge across the train tracks to Symphony Park.
Okay.
We've got plans that we're working on for the bus station to redevelop. And then right here on Main Street, we're going to build a new bar, a new casino, a new patio for Oscar Steakhouse, a new entertainment venue with some fun ideas.
Oh, good.
And then we're opening the Sand Dollar, which is under construction, our new live music and cocktail bar.
Oh, so good projects. I mean,
So we're working on some good. That's all in the next 6 to 8 months. You'll be
so
here.
it's fast.
Yeah, it better be. Well, supply chain issues.
Yeah.
But you'll be here for them, I hope.
Great. No,
I
I'd
hope.
love to. No, that's great. That's exciting news. That's very cool. Now, what do you think about the economy in general? I mean, I've been talking a lot about inflation and everything that's going around, supply chain issues, what's causing and all that. What's your opinion in a macro level, and what's your opinion in the city, in Vegas? What do you see coming?
It's pretty crazy, right? Because nobody I talk to can explain why everyone had the best year they ever had in 2021. Everyone says you'll never have a year like that again.
Well, more than $1 trillion was thrown into the economy by the government, right? That's
right. That probably is a big factor of it. So that to me is the hardest part to pinpoint. How much of the impact was that? How much of this crazy year that everyone had came because the government just pumped in all this money? Trying to figure that out has proven to be very difficult for everybody because nobody really knows what the new normal is. So some people say it's just going to go back to 2019 levels. Maybe.
Could be.
The flip side is nobody woke up in 2021 and said, I'm going to start gambling. Like it wasn't a thing that everybody just became much bigger or more frequent gamblers. So, or maybe they did because the pandemic had that effect on people. But I think there's a unknown in the market which is very unsettling to people in terms of how much was that impact, what is the new normal, and frankly, when do we get back to that? It's impossible to project. It's impossible. Now, we all want to believe 2021 is the new normal. I do think that downtown is a little different because there's been so much more investment in the last 2 years. Just look across the street at Circa. That investment has changed the landscape downtown permanently. But to what extent? And then you get into the supply chain issues. You get into the labor shortages. You read about inflation is wiping out any wage increases. So you give more wage increases, which just leads to more inflation. It's just a vicious cycle that we're in right now. And that's difficult. But I do think that downtown specifically is seeing a new normal. And I think that it's going to be very hard, even in the next 12 months, to gauge where the city as a whole is, because who knows when convention's going to come back. You know what I mean? Large scale conventions. We just had CES and it was 75-80% less than it should have been. So hotel occupancy, which really wasn't there that much last year anyway.
So mainly was gambling, most of the income.
And F&B.
Food and beverages.
Right. So I'm sort of in a strange position downtown because definitely those market forces that drove 2021 have subsided, but we're still seeing great pickup in the F&B and the gaming. We're just waiting on the large-scale groups and conventions to come back. And then I think we'll be off to the races.
I hope so.
Better be.
What about real estate? Are you guys planning on acquisition of more land to develop other projects? I mean, what's your...
Yeah, we would love to. I mean...
In downtown mainly?
In downtown, we don't want to be overly committed to downtown, but it's what we know best. It's where we've been this whole time. So we are looking at acquiring some stuff we used to own, some stuff that is new, and definitely would be open if the opportunities arise. Again, the problem you have, a lot of the places just had the best year they ever had. So now they want to sell based on a multiple of 2021. I don't know that 2021 is reasonable. Or achievable. Those highs that we had. But that's the same everywhere in the city. You're seeing that all over.
And I think all over the place. We do real estate investment in different cities in the US, so I'm familiar with other markets. And we see the same thing. I mean, to be honest, we got to be, in order to analyze any market, we got to be very local, right? I mean, I'm not a big fan of the macro view because every market, every city is so different. But I agree with that.
But I was in New York last week, and it was quiet. It didn't have that same New York feel, didn't have that same energy. And then you start to wonder, is office space. Now, Omicron probably kept a lot of people home in the last 2 months. But at what point does office space go back to
normal?
Normal, if ever.
If ever.
Do those prices get back to what they were in Midtown, downtown? It's hard to say.
And I definitely think there's markets that are being hit a lot harder than others. There's other markets that are still booming in commercial real estate or residential. But it depends on the market. I agree with that. So I'm gonna ask you the question that I get from middle schoolers. I do
Okay.
a presentation to middle school public schools, and I
Okay.
talk to them about entrepreneurship and achieving their goals. Is a very rewarding experience for me. And right now we're doing it in Zoom calls.
That's great.
And I get like questions like how do you get to be successful? How do you? And they're very simple questions for them, right?
Yeah.
So that would be the same question for you. How can somebody, or how can a child or a middle school see themselves becoming a CEO of any company?
Right.
What is that mindset that you had, or it was taught to you, or you took it into you to become a CEO?
Yeah. It's a very good question. I think that obviously luck and timing play a very big part in anyone's life, and finding that industry or that area where you can excel and be passionate enough to enjoy it. But the biggest thing that I see changing, or the biggest thing that I see even with some of my friends, is a lack of patience. And patience to me is what gave me this opportunity. Because if I had been like a lot of young people today, or a lot of my friends that I speak with even back in 2007, between 2007 and 2010, not only was it not glamorous, because it was pretty bad here, but it was a really difficult time. It was a very big challenge. And I think most people would have probably said, what am I doing? Why am I in downtown Las Vegas? Why am I suffering through this? Why am I struggling? I am just suffering, but why am I fighting against the trend? What am I trying to do here? And people would have said, nah, it's no good down here. It's not going to happen. It's not going to change. It's not going to evolve. And that's where people quit, or they look for something else. And I find people are too quick to do that. I'm not saying you should stick in something that's bad for the long time.
Correct. But sometimes we quit, or people quit, when the roots are starting to grow. And at that moment, because we're so frustrated because it's not happening quick, we quit. And then
you got to give yourself time, and you got to be patient, because I see it so much. And especially young people now, they're like, well, I don't want to work for 4 years in that position before. Yeah, that's what it takes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then one day that opportunity is going to come out of nowhere, like it did for me, and you got to be ready to jump on it.
And I go back to what you said. So maybe it's not really luck. It's because you were patient. You were at the right time.
You create your own luck.
Correct.
You create your own luck.
So because you were patient, you were at the perfectly right time when the decision about the
and I was
CEO
ready for it at that time.
You were ready.
But the most problematic thing I see now, and I see it from, I think social media is a lot to blame as well, because there's so much instant gratification, and people see other people's success so much more.
And there's a lot of people selling you a dream, right?
Right. You see other people's success, you say, I want that. Oh, you got to work 5 years for that? I don't want to do that. And the problem I see is the young people don't want to spend that time, and they don't want to suffer. Now, the flip side is it may never materialize, right? But if you jump to the next thing, it doesn't mean that's going to work either. So there's just this idea of instant gratification and stick through. Give something real proper chance before you jump ship. I can't tell you, my wife will tell you one day I was so down, and I was 2011, 2012. I was thinking to myself, this isn't for me. I should just quit this. What am I doing? And most people probably would have. And I don't know what it was in me that made me stick it out at that point. You know, should I have gone back to London then? And who knows what I would have ended up doing.
I felt like that many days, man. I mean, it's part of growing and just going through the obstacles, right? That leads to my next question. What do you do to be motivated every day, right? Because those days that sometimes we feel down, or there's huge obstacles in front of us that sometimes I'm done with this, right? What keeps you motivated to, even though you're not having the best day, you still come to the office and you're motivating, and you're a leader of another 700 people, that you gotta show that motivation. What do you do? I mean, you feed yourself with something, you practice meditation, you do yoga. I don't know, man. What do you do?
Well, it's funny you say, I have started some breathing exercises. I find them very helpful. Like Wim Hof, the Iceman.
Yeah.
I do find that there's comfort in discomfort. In terms of like breath holding, cold water, but that's got nothing to do with it. I just started that like maybe a few months ago. I think it's all about perception. And again, you got to remember, right? If you came out here in 2007 and you saw people losing their jobs, and you saw people desperate, and you saw real suffering and real challenges, it's much easier to be uplifting and upbeat about a challenge that frankly isn't that big of a deal. And most things aren't that big of a deal. You just think they are in the moment, and you don't know how to overcome that. But I don't know, if you really love what you're doing and you really enjoy it and you see, I was talking about this with my director of hotel last night. He was like, I said, if you're overwhelmed, talk to me. And he goes, honestly, I find comfort in the craziness. And I thought, like, that's how I feel sometimes. Like, I like it. I like the challenges because I know that by dealing with those things, it's one step to making us a better business, a better property. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but I think it's a lot to do with perspective. And I think it's a lot to do with turning those things that you're maybe struggling with into opportunities to deal with.
I think is a great thing that you just said. I just actually finished reading a book called Don't Sweat the Small Stuff.
Yeah.
And that's basically it, right? We live our lives as an emergency, and we are trying we think that everything is the end of the world, right? And I think that's key, perspective.
And having a good team around you, people that uplift you, that when you come to work, you don't feel like you're the only one struggling with things, that people around you are all going in the same direction. And that's easier here because it's a small property. We're more of a family thing, which can be good or bad. But yeah, I think you're right. It's about not overly complicating things.
And at the end of the day, everything is going to be fine.
Correct.
You know,
Correct.
at the end of the day,
in almost every business, it's not, as Winston Churchill said, success is not final and failure is not fatal.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that. That's true.
That's how I do it. That's how I deal with a lot of my things. Decision making as well. You know, you take a risk. It's not final if it's successful, and if it's not good, it's not fatal. And that's kind of why I say what I said about having that perspective on. I also have like when we have a really good year, I don't get crazy, and when we have a really bad year, I don't go crazy. It's about being a little bit more balanced and not finding those extremes. And you got to find ways to. In our business, it's really difficult because we're 24/7. So if I wanted to be here 24/7, I can drive myself crazy 24/7. You wake up in the morning, you got casino numbers, things, and it's about how do you find that balance?
How do you spend time with your family? How do you unplug from the 24/7 business you run?
I'm going to come on your podcast and ask you that question because I'm still trying to figure that out. I think it's important. I found hobbies that help me to do that. But that is a big problem in society today.
That's a big question.
Helping people to switch off, unplug.
I was talking to a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine last week, and you know, he's very busy, man. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he goes, well, I'm trying to generate more. I'm like, yeah, but you're generating more by doing more. You should do the opposite, generating more by doing less, right? Because that's, once again, the quality of life too, right? But no, I think that's a work in progress for most of us.
Well, it's an interesting thing what you just said as well. What I'm trying to learn is as people make more money, they spend more money. So their quality of life their savings never really go up. Their quality of life doesn't necessarily go up. They just buy more expensive things. It's about making more and then not necessarily having to spend all of that and to keep your lifestyle in check. So yeah, I think there's a lot of importance to that.
And like you said, I think we're still not figuring that out. I think we're working in progress, and like you said,
these things
in our society,
they ruined everything.
Exactly.
They ruined everything.
I'm gonna ask you about some books.
Yeah.
But one book that I love, actually, it has helped me a lot to minimize my usage of technology, especially when I'm at home spending time with my kids. You know, number one, I take the phone, I put it on my drawer. I don't even look at the phone from like 7 o'clock until the next day, unless it's an emergency. It's hard at the beginning, but you know, it helped me.
When you say it's an emergency, though, it's on loud, so it rings if it's an emergency?
No, I will. I mean, if it's but what's an emergency once again, right?
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
right.
We treat life as an emergency.
Right.
If it's something that can wait until tomorrow from 9 o'clock at night to 7 in the morning,
right,
it shouldn't be an emergency,
should wait,
right? Unless it's obviously a family emergency. But I'm with my family, right?
Right.
But there's it's Tim Ferriss. Probably you know Tim Ferriss.
I like his stuff.
So there's good tips there too.
The 4-hour work week.
The 4-hour work week, yeah.
Some of it's a little crazy, but I guess
it's a little crazy. It might work for some people, but I try to take little tips here and there, right? But I think that this connection is key.
I like his podcast, and I get his email 5 Friday.
Yeah,
I like his stuff there.
Yeah. So tell me, so what kind of books you like to read, and it doesn't have to be business related. It can be any type of topic.
I mean, I read a broad variety. I also like a lot of documentaries. I have a good list of documentaries if you ever want a list of documentaries.
That's cool.
But books that I've read lately that have been very informative to me are there's one called the $1 Trillion Coach.
Okay.
And he was a life coach to a lot of the Silicon Valley guys.
Okay.
It's very much worth reading. And it talks about managing people. It talks about managing executives. You know, what's interesting is when you think about, I keep going back to sports teams, but why does a sports team have a coach? They're the peak of their athleticism. Why do they need a coach? But yet when you look at companies, they don't have any coaches. Nobody's overlooking what the management team are doing necessarily, is unless you have like a public company and you have a board. But a lot of CEOs and high-level executives, they don't have coaches. And taking that logic, like Roger Federer, he has a coach. What can the coach teach him? He's the best tennis player ever. So, which is a debatable thing if he's the best ever, but in my opinion, why would you have a coach for Roger Federer? But the idea of balance, somebody to talk to, different perspective. And I never really thought of it like that until I read this book. So the $1 Trillion Coach,
$1 Trillion Coach, okay.
is a really good book. I read some more. I like stuff related to gaming. So, for example, the Caesar's Palace Crew was very interesting. I don't know if you've had a chance to read that.
No, I haven't.
Story about Apollo and TPG, where they bought out Caesars.
Okay.
And you just hear the crazy stuff that was going on in corporate America and raising money, and very interesting. Have you read David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me?
No, I haven't. Oh, I've heard about that book though.
That guy's
Great
crazy.
reviews, yes.
That guy's crazy.
I heard him actually in the podcast. They were interviewing him. He was promoting his book.
Yeah.
I haven't read it though, but
it's worth reading. I mean, some of it you'll be like, that's not possible. That couldn't have happened. But the psychology, and it sort of goes back to what I say about perspective, right? Like we think our challenges are big now. Like, not to say you are, but you're a wimp. Is basically what he would say. You're a wimp. Like you've been through nothing.
Yes.
You suck it up and get on with it. Like and that's
his
mentality.
That's what I got when I heard him on the podcast.
Basically, and that's what you read a whole book about. But his stories are interesting, and you're like, oh my God, the human body is capable of that. Like, what the hell was I thinking?
And I go back to perspective, right? Because what really the problems that we're dealing with you grew up in South Africa, you've been in South Africa. I'm sure the problems over there are way different of the problems over here. I'm from South America. I see the difference. And that's perspective, right?
Right.
So maybe when I heard him on that book, he was promoting it, he kind of, because he talks a lot about his childhood, I think, right? And how rough was on him, right? And maybe gives you the perspective we're talking about. But yeah, I mean, those are great books. Thanks for sharing that. So 3 top skills that anybody should work on to become better, not only in business, but in life. I know we are got to work in many, but your top 3.
I think that number one, I think today, especially, it's important to listen, taking the time to listen to what people are actually saying, people are telling you, people are thinking, because I think a lot of people, a lot of times we just react, and we don't take that time. So listening would be a good one. Taking good risks, being creative, not being afraid to try new things. I think a lot of times people are nervous to try things, to
get out of their comfortable zone.
Get out of the comfort zone. I think
one thing that you said at the beginning that I think we didn't touch on that is that when you were here and you put yourself out there, you network with a lot of people. You met a lot of people. Yeah. And I think that skill of networking and in a way sales,
right?
Because you're selling yourself in a way, it's key. And I always think that sales is one of the number one top skills that everybody should know. If you're a CEO or if you're, selling vacuum cleaners, whatever it is. But
I used to sell vacuum cleaners.
You did, really?
I did. That's a whole different story. That's the next podcast.
That's for another podcast.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you develop your sales skills.
Yeah, and just having the confidence to talk to people. Yeah. Confidence is very important. I'm not sure I'm answering this in any particular order, but what I tell people as well? If you're not fired with enthusiasm, you will be fired with enthusiasm. And I think that's important, just being enthusiastic, positive, because you pick up so much more. People want to be around people that are enthusiastic, people that want to be around people that are positive. And when you find those people, that's how you gravitate towards them. Those are the people that are the best at sales. Yeah. They're most confident, and they're most excited about what they're doing.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that's awesome, man. Well, thank you for the time. Thank you for having us here at the Plaza. And we really enjoyed the conversation with you, and for sure we're gonna do it again.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it, David. It's
Thank
nice
you,
to see you, and congrats on the podcast.
Yes, we got to go play soccer again.
Yes.